What's happening, peeps? Thanks as always for passing by the channel, much appreciated. Hit that subscribe button if you guys are new. Don't forget as well, please, to like and share the videos. Thank you to everybody who's been getting involved so far. And well, this is like a different video that I'm making this time. There's not been much going on in the world of sports and boxing really. I'm kind of waiting until next month to kind of get them videos going. And the Six Nations is coming up soon, so I will be doing a prediction video for that. But after all the talk of like Conor and Dustin in the UFC last week, I decided to do a bit more on it because I really enjoy talking about it. So I thought, randomly, that I would do my top 6 MMA fighters of all time. Because I love doing little ones like this, you know, debates, who's the best, you know, discussing different fighters and all that kind of stuff. So I will go through my top 6 and then give you an official kind of ranking at the end of where I'd place each one. So let's have a look. First things first, I would like to give an honourable mention to 4 guys who didn't quite make the list, which are Henry Cejudo, Randy Couture, Jose Aldo and DC. Those 4 I did think could actually be on this list, but decided not to because my top 6 are finalised and each one I've placed in here for a legit reason. So the first guy is Stipe Miocic. Got a record of 20 wins, 3 defeats. He's got wins over Francis Ngannou, Fabricio Verdum, Alistair Overeem, Junior Dos Santos and DC. 2 wins over DC, might I add. 2-time heavyweight champion, the UFC. Defended his title 3 times, which is a current record for that division. So he's generally regarded as the best heavyweight of all time, which by extension makes him one of the best UFC fighters of all time. One thing for sure is because this is most focusing on UFC champions, I won't see no Fedor Emelianenko in here. That's why I've got Stipe, because I didn't really watch Fedor when I was growing up. When I was in high school, it was still mostly about UFC, so I only knew about Chuck Liddell, Tito Ortiz, Randy Couture and GSP. I didn't really watch Bellator, Pride or Strikeforce. Also in the UK, we didn't really have access to those sorts of programs. So when I think of a best heavyweight of all time, if I was looking across the entire MMA world, it would be Fedor, for sure. Fedor is a different category altogether. But in terms of UFC heavyweight, part of me wanted to put DC, but Stipe, with the 2 wins over DC out of 3 fights, really has shown that he's the best heavyweight in history, really. You know, he's got the highest amount of defenses for that title. He's in a division where there's not that many the heavyweight division has not been that many dominant champions. So whereas Stipe, I think, is actually the legit first time we could have one of those, like a champion with actually quite a long reign. He has a rematch coming up with Ngannou soon. That'll be interesting. Which, if he wins that fight rematch, that will just further strengthen his legacy as the greatest heavyweight of all time, which for me right now is already irrefutable. So Stipe Miocic is one. Probably not going to be too high up the list, but I think he's worth mentioning anyway. Next we've got Anderson Silva, Spider. I mean, come on, any list when you're talking about the greatest of all time has to have this guy in here, don't you? Record of 34 wins, 11 defeats with 1 non-contest. 2 wins over Chael Sonnen. He has wins over Franklin, Vitor, Dan Henderson and Damian Maia, which are all solid wins. Holds the 2nd highest record for most title defenses, which is 10. Longest title reign in UFC history, 2,457 days. I think it was 2008 till 2013, I think he had that. He also has the record for the most consecutive victories, which currently stands at 16. That's another thing to keep in mind. And he's also, one thing people forget is the fact that Silva went up to the light heavyweight division and dominated the likes of Forrest Griffin and Stefan Bonner. You know, that seriously is impressive, and people need to take that more seriously, because being pound for pound really does make a huge difference in where you rank overall. He popped for PEDs after the Diaz fight, and he's definitely fallen from grace in his later career. I think his last 9 fights he's had something like 7 defeats, 1 win and a draw. He's now retired, which he could have retired so much like further before. Has that kind of fall from grace and fall of form, has that damaged his reputation at all? For some people it has. For me, maybe a little, but not too much. Still deserves to be in any top 5 list, like, for sure. Silva's fights could be hit or miss. Like, sometimes you'd get like an explosive knockout, like the Griffin fight or Vitor or something like that. But other fights you would get like really nothing at all. Some of his fights could be quite slow and kind of, not much going on, such as the Liatis fight, that one where people were literally like kind of falling asleep and Silva was kind of trying all these new funky moves. But despite this, he is a must-add to any list of all-time greats, and is definitely the greatest middleweight of all time. So Anderson Silva certainly has a call. Next one, for me, someone is hugely underrated as the greatest of all time, is Demetrius Johnson, Mighty Mouse. He's got a record of 30 wins, 3-3-1. He's got notable 2 wins over Benavidez, 2 wins over Dodson, Horiguchi, Borg, Reese, and of course a win over Henry Cejudo before he lost in their rematch. He's got the record for the most UFC title defences of all time, 11, very important. He shares that with Jon Jones. The only fighter to record 10 takedowns in 3 separate fights, and he holds the record for the most amount of finishes in the flyweight division. Never popped for any banned substances, he's always made weight on time. He actually went down in weight from bantamweight to flyweight because he was a better fighter down there. I think Demetrius Johnson is honestly one of the most underrated fighters of all time. Like, people do not give this guy enough credit to how good he is. His dominance in the flyweight, every flyweight from now will be compared to Demetrius Johnson, no matter how well they do. He has left that much of a legacy. And the UFC, I mean, why Dana White chose to trade Demetrius Johnson for Ben Askren, I mean, that is one of the most upsetting, disappointing deals that the UFC have ever done in history. I mean, that's almost insulting. I mean, you look at Ben Askren, I mean, yeah, he's nothing compared to what Johnson's been up to. Demetrius Johnson has gone over to one championship MMA, and in 3 fights is already the one championship flyweight champion. After 3 fights, he's already a champion. That's a testament to how good he is. So he ranks highly on mine. Could be a potential top 3, but we'll see. We've got a few big ones coming up. And then, of course, the next one, of course, is George St-Pierre, GSP. The George St. Pimp, as many people call him. Man, I used to know about GSP when I was in school, and he was just incredible. Record of 26-2. He's got wins over BJ Penn, Shields, Candid, Nick Diaz, Hendricks, and Michael Bisping at middleweight. As well as this, I think what's most important about GSP is he avenged both his only career defeats against Matt Hughes and Matt Serra, which really does. I think people don't take that enough into consideration, that actually lessens the impact of the defeat. It's just like AJ when he lost against Andy Ruiz. Everyone was like, oh, AJ's done, he's washed. AJ basically signed for the rematch, went to Saudi Arabia, beat Ruiz. Yeah, I know Ruiz stunk the joint out because he came in like 20 stone. But now, because of that, it kind of, people don't really think too much about the defeat. People are like, yeah, he lost, but he came back and beat him. So he's kind of like evened things out. GSP did that with both his defeats, and Matt Hughes as well. Matt Hughes ain't anyone to sleep on. He's potential top 10 candidacy for UFC greats as well. So it's something, definitely GSP has a solid claim to number 1. Multi-division champ, 10 welterweight defences at the title, longest welterweight title reign, and at one point he held the most UFC title victories, 13, which has only been surpassed by Jones. Greatest welterweight of all time, easy. He's had no PEDs, he's always making weight. His legacy of excellence is something that set the bar for all future UFC fighters, and that's something which is really seriously impressive. His dominance is just unbelievable. Out of 12 decision wins, only 2 were split. Other than that, all unanimous. And GSP also established this idea of kind of a well-rounded fighter. Someone who was good at everything. Whereas you had strikers, wrestlers, grapplers, GSP was good at all of that, and kicks as well. So GSP, oh, he might get it. He might get this top spot, but we'll see. Next we have got Jon Bones Jones. Easily the most controversial one on the list, man. But let's have a look at what he has. He's got a record of 26-1, the only loss is a DQ, and his non-contest was testing positive for PEDs. 2 wins over Daniel Cormier. He has a win over Chael Sonnen, Vitor, Rashad Evans, Rampage, and Lyoto Machida. He holds the record for the most UFC title defenses, which is shared with Demetrius Johnson, which is 11. Most record for most wins in title bouts, and as well, people forget this, he was the youngest ever UFC title winner when he was 23 years old. That's again something which is seriously, like, that's something people forget about Jones. That he's not just been good, you know, recently. His legacy and fights have always been, he's always been dominant. And as well, Jones has openly admitted to not even training for fights. You know, like I think he said to DC, like, I beat you when I was literally partying and going out and doing coke. And DC, and you look at how good DC is as a heavyweight, and I mean, you know, it's just incredible. That is a credit to how good he is, and the fact that Jones himself is now going to try his luck in the heavyweight division. I mean, you look at his social media, he's looking huge. I mean, if he goes up there and wins a title, I mean, we could be looking at something incredible there. He has looked beatable on a couple of occasions though, such as the Thiago Santos fight, which was a split decision. The Dominic Reyes fight, Reyes thought he won that fight. But despite this, Jones is without a doubt one of the best martial arts fighters to ever set foot in a cage. However, he is as talented as he is controversial. Eye pokes, convictions, oblique kicks, illegal groin kicks, you know, and the fact that he's failed 4 drug tests. 4. He's been popped at so many times. Steroids, cocaine, turnable, metabolites and stuff like that. And he's been stripped 3 times. That to me takes away some of the chances of him being a top, well, certainly number 1 anyway. Because anytime a fighter pops for PEDs, it's not the first time that they've done PEDs. This is just the first time they've been caught. So that's what some people need to kind of know. Like, it's like when Canelo got popped in boxing, or when Jarrell Miller got popped. People were saying, well, actually, if you go back and look at his fights, he's been doing this for plenty of fights before. It's a matter of this time he got caught. So with Jones being caught 4 times, I'm kind of like, well, in that case, how many times has he actually been doing this? So Jones is a really tough one, man. He's a really, really tough one to call, because he's got so many good attributes. He's got such a good fighter, but at the end of the day, he's got all this kind of dirt which comes with him. Given the level of opposition he's faced and in the fashion in which he's won in the fights, I would definitely say he deserves to be in any, you know, greatest of all time list. And he's definitely the most accomplished UFC champion of all time. In terms of greatest fighter, that's where the debate comes in for me. And now on to the final one, which is the recently retired Khabib Nurmagomedov, the Dagestani animal that wrestled bears as a child. You know, let's have a look here. Record 29-0, the only fighter on this list with an undefeated record. Notable wins over Rafael dos Anjos, Iaquinta, Michael Johnson, Dustin Poirier, Justin Gaethje, and of course Conor McGregor. Longest reigning UFC lightweight champion, easily the greatest UFC lightweight of all time. He holds the record for most takedowns in a fight, 21, which is crazy. What separates Khabib from the rest is his dominance, I suppose. He's not had the most in terms of championship fights, but that's where the kind of debate on where do you place the greatest of all time comes in. Do you base it on championships, or do you base it on the fighter as a whole, their entire career? Because Khabib has only lost a maximum of 2 rounds across 29 fights, and even then, that's debatable. Khabib not only wins fights, but in most cases he absolutely dominates and destroys them with his wrestling and jiu-jitsu. You know, he's an undefeated champ, no controversies, pound for pound number one, definitely. No failed drug test, he's never been knocked down, he's never been cut. I think that's another thing people have to take in mind. He's never been cut, never been, you know, bruised up. You always see him after a fight and he looks fine. And it's safe to say no one at 155, past or present, can beat him. His pedigree, work ethic and humbleness have all merged to make the greatest fighter, a perfect fighter, much like GSP. So I'll go to my official top 6 if I was going to make this a list. Because if I was going to make this about the greatest fighter in terms of who's made the most money, it would be Conor McGregor. If it was who's beat the most former champions, it would be Jon Jones. Who has the longest winning streak, Anderson Silva. Or who has defended their belt the most, would be Demetrius Johnson. But I'm going to try and take a look at all of that and who's been dominant the most as well. So I'm going to go number 6, I'm going to give to Stipe Miocic. Number 5, I'm going to give to Silva. It seems a bit harsh, but I don't know with Silva. I do want to rank him higher, but I just think the ones above him just beat him. I don't know why. Fuck it. Number 6, Stipe. 5, Silva. Number 4, Demetrius Johnson. Part of me wants to put him 3, but I can't put Jon Jones any lower than 3 just because of what he's done. So number 3 is Jon Jones. The hardest bit for me is Khabib and GSP, because I want to put Khabib number 1, but I have to take my fan hat off. I'm going to give number 1 to GSP. I just think that GSP being in more title fights, I think he defended his title, his middleweight title 9 times, which is a record for that division. That to me does enough over Khabib only defending 3 times. Now don't get me wrong, I think if Khabib comes back and if he was to fight GSP and win, Khabib takes his top spot, easy, no question, because Khabib's dominance in that sense has just been unparalleled, whereas GSP's dominance has been. If GSP was to beat Khabib, it would be the same thing. So yeah, Stipe, Silva, Demetrius Johnson, Jon Jones, Khabib Nurmagomedov, George St-Pierre. That's my list of the top 6 UFC fighters of all time. Let me know what you think in the comments. Agree, disagree, and I've really enjoyed doing this video, and I'll see you all soon for the next one, whatever that may be. Peace and love, people. Peace and love as always.